Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! For over a decade, I've worked as a caregiver for elderly people. It's demanding work, but I love it. There's something meaningful about helping someone maintain their dignity when they can't do everything for themselves anymore. My husband's brother married this woman when I was already working in the field. She got into caregiving too, and for a while, I thought we had that in common. Our family was tight back then. My two sons, especially my youngest, who's 10, adored spending time with their four cousins. Every weekend, every holiday, every birthday, those kids were at our house or we were at theirs. My 18-year-old would play video games with the older ones while my youngest would build block towers with the little ones. It was chaotic and loud and perfect. When my husband's grandfather started showing signs of dementia, it made sense that his sister-in-law and I would help. We both knew what we were doing, and family takes care of family, right? We worked out a schedule where we'd alternate visits, making sure he was eating, taking his medications, and staying safe in his home. Everything fell apart in March. I'll never forget the phone call. My husband's grandfather was crying, confused, holding a credit card statement. Over $21,000 in charges. He couldn't remember making any of them because he hadn't. When we sat down with the statement, my stomach dropped. Backstreet Boys concert tickets for $800. Boudoir photography sessions for $1,600. Hundreds of dollars in food deliveries. $450 just from one Mexican restaurant. A $400 cruise excursion. Designer work scrubs for $650. Victoria's Secret shopping sprees totaling $600. A $700 Venmo payment to her best friend. When we confronted her, she broke down immediately. She apologized over and over, swearing she'd pay it back. She begged us not to tell anyone and promised she'd fix everything. I told her she'd stolen from a man with dementia, from her husband's own grandfather. She kept saying she knew that she understood, but insisted she could make monthly payments if we'd just give her a chance. My husband said this wasn't about chances anymore, that this was theft. She started crying harder and asked us to think about her kids, wondering what would happen to them if this got out. But this wasn't just about her anymore. This was about protecting vulnerable people. On my next scheduled visit with grandfather, I drove him straight to the sheriff's office. He was lucid enough that day to understand what had happened, and he wanted to press charges. She'd stolen his sense of security along with his money. The fallout was immediate. She was fired from her caregiving job and blacklisted from working with elderly clients in our county. She cried to anyone who'd listen that losing her job should be punishment enough, that we were destroying her family over a mistake. But then she made things worse. She banned the kids from seeing us. No more weekends, no more holidays, nothing. My youngest cried for weeks, asking why his cousins couldn't come over anymore. My 18-year-old just got quiet and angry. My husband tried talking to his brother, but he stood by his wife. The months dragged on. She bounced from job to job. Then in October, she got fired again. Stealing again. Different employer, same problem. Around the same time, I switched jobs. I needed my social security card for the new hire paperwork and couldn't find it. I tore apart my filing cabinet, checked every drawer, nothing. Then a credit card I never applied for showed up in the mail. Here's the thing. We'd given her and my husband's brother the house we used to live in. Just gave it to them so they'd have a stable place to raise the kids. My mail still occasionally got sent there. Credit card offers mostly. I had a bad feeling in my gut, but no proof. I called her and asked directly if she'd applied for any credit cards in my name. She acted outraged that I would even accuse her after everything I'd supposedly put her through. I pushed and asked her to just answer the question. She denied it completely and said she couldn't believe I'd think that about her. I wanted to believe her. I really did. Then on November 21st, I got an alert on my phone. A new PayPal credit account had been opened in my name. $250 had already been sent to someone. I called the credit company immediately, then drove to the police station. The officer taking my report looked tired. He asked if I thought it was my sister-in-law. I explained that she lived at my old address, that she had a history, that she'd stolen before. He told me they'd need documentation from the bank showing who applied. When I confronted her again, she insisted she hadn't done anything and accused me of trying to frame her out of spite. I told her she wouldn't mind then. When the bank paperwork came back, she called it harassment and said she was a victim in all this. That's when she made her move. She called my husband 3 days before Christmas. She told him the kids wouldn't see us for Christmas unless we dropped all charges against her. Every single one. Both grandfather's case and whatever we thought she'd done to me. My husband asked if she was really using the kids as blackmail. She said she was protecting her children from people who wanted to destroy their mother. My husband told her she was destroying herself just fine without our help and hung up. I heard him in the other room explaining to our youngest that his cousins wouldn't be coming for Christmas. The sound of my son crying made something crack inside me. Christmas morning was hollow. My 18-year-old kept checking his phone like maybe the cousins would text. My youngest barely touched his presents. We went through the motions, but the joy was gone. I pushed harder with the police, called the bank daily. Finally got the paperwork showing the application had been submitted from my old address with information only someone in that house would have. Her contact information was all over it. The court hearing was last week. I sat in that courtroom and watched her cry and apologize and promise to change. I'd heard it all before after she stole from grandfather. The judge wasn't interested in her excuses. The judge sentenced her to 20 days in jail, suspended until after the first of the year, and ordered $8,000 in restitution. She cried out that her kids needed her for Christmas. The judge told her she should have thought about that before committing identity theft, that she was getting a gift by not spending Christmas in jail, and warned her not to make him regret it. She looked at me leaving the courtroom like this was somehow my fault, like I'd forced her to steal from an elderly man with dementia, like I'd made her commit identity theft against family. My youngest asked yesterday if his cousins could come over for New Year's Eve. I had to tell him no. Maybe someday when they're older, they'll understand why their mother kept them away, why we couldn't just let it go. But right now, all I know is that doing the right thing cost me my relationship with 4 kids I loved like my own, and she still thinks she's the victim. I guess I should start by explaining who my father is, or at least what kind of person he is. Growing up with him was hell. He made life miserable for everyone around him, especially my mother. I'm not going to go on and on about all the terrible things he did, but a family court judge once called him the most despicable human being who'd ever been in his courtroom. That's the kind of man we're talking about here. I found that quote in the divorce documents I got from the courthouse, the same documents where I discovered all the illegal stuff he'd been doing to steal from my mother. My father is a pathological narcissist. He acts exactly how you'd expect someone like that to act. He's selfish, cruel, and absolutely terrible with money when it comes to other people. Hitting him in the wallet is like doing something truly painful to him. He's a complete monster, honestly. About 10 months ago, I was going through a really rough time. I've been dealing with some serious mental health issues related to the abuse I suffered from my father and also from working as a paramedic for 15 years. I'd seen a lot of terrible things in that job, things that stuck with me. I decided to quit drinking and started getting proper treatment for my condition. I thought maybe trying to reconnect with my father might help me heal and maybe even improve our relationship. I was completely wrong about that. When I tried to talk to him about everything, it went terribly. We ended up in this huge argument where he screamed at me. He told me I was a failed paramedic, that I was a liar, and that I was a worthless alcoholic. That last one really got to me. I'd been sober for 14 months at that point and was really proud of it. Hearing him say that made me absolutely furious. I decided right then that I was going to dig up every piece of dirt I could find on him and see what kind of man he really was. I drove to the courthouse and requested copies of all the public records related to my parents' divorce. Everything is available to the public, so I bought as many documents as I could. I also got a full file from my mother with all her divorce papers. I spent hours going through everything, reading every single page carefully. That's when I found something interesting. According to the final settlement from their divorce back in 2002, my mother was supposed to receive one-third of my father's employment pension. She'd been a stay-at-home mother and never had the chance to earn her own pension, so the judge awarded her part of his. The strange thing was that my father had been bragging for years about taking his full pension early and retiring comfortably. There was no way. He'd been living on only two-thirds of his pension for the last 10 years without complaining about it constantly. He would have never shut up about it if that were the case. I called my mother and asked her if she'd been collecting a pension or if she'd cashed it out years ago. She told me she hadn't received anything from that pension at all, nothing whatsoever. That was very interesting. I started wondering if the money was still collectible and what 20 years of compound interest would make it worth. I also realized that my father had apparently been collecting my mother's portion for 10 years, which was a direct violation of a court order. I asked my mother why she hadn't gone after him for this sooner. She explained that she couldn't afford a lawyer and that after dealing with him for 20 years, she just didn't have the energy anymore. He always found ways to dodge his obligations, so she eventually gave up trying. The way the settlement was worded, there was basically no statute of limitations that could protect him. I had him completely caught. My mother would finally get what she was owed. I just needed to hire a lawyer to help me make it happen, so I set out to find the most aggressive attorney I could. The lawyer I hired suggested we send a demand letter to the pension office first before filing a lawsuit. I agreed but decided to call the pension office myself instead. I got transferred to the woman who was managing my father's file. She was wonderful to talk to, and I could tell she absolutely hated my father by the time we finished our conversation. We talked for 45 minutes about all sorts of things. I told her about my family situation and how my father had treated everyone. By the end of it, I swear she would have done anything to help me take him down. Since I had copies of correspondence her office had sent to my father years ago, which he'd completely ignored for 5 years straight, she was more than willing to help me immediately. She told me she'd start the process right away. With my lawyer's help providing all the necessary documentation, the pension office didn't even bother asking my father to comply anymore. They just did it for him. It had been about 2 months since I'd last spoken to my father. He had absolutely no idea that his pension was about to get destroyed. Here's what happened. My mother's portion was made whole and adjusted to reflect proper maturity, so his early retirement didn't affect her fund at all. He lost 10 years of valuation to her, and because he'd retired 3 years early, he was knocked down to 17 years of pension valuation instead of 27. He'd been collecting my mother's money and had been overpaid by $30,000 per year for the last 10 years. The pension company clawed back that entire overpayment from his current pension fund. It absolutely destroyed his private retirement fund. He also had a government pension that he'd taken early too, which made things even worse for him. My father did some truly awful things to me, but I only had to deal with him for 17 years. My mother dealt with him for 20. As much as I did this out of spite and for my own satisfaction, I really did it to give my mother a chance at a proper retirement. About 3 months after I contacted the pension office, my mother started collecting her pension. To celebrate, she bought tickets to New Zealand for the whole family so we could visit our relatives there. I was able to get most of my lawyer's retainer back, and to celebrate my victory, I went online and ordered a glitter bomb. I shipped it to my father anonymously from another country. I heard from my sister that he opened it in his stupid red sports car. He'll never get all that glitter out, ever. Looking back, I needed the money badly enough to work part-time throughout sixth form just to afford university. My parents couldn't help financially, so I saved everything I could for my first term and basic supplies. When I got accepted, I applied for student housing but didn't get a place in halls. I ended up finding a private rental through the university's accommodation board. The house had 5 bedrooms and I shared with another girl and 3 boys. I met them briefly before we moved in and they seemed decent enough. The other girl was quite shy and mostly kept to herself, which was fine by me. The 3 boys were typical university lads, loud and always up for a laugh, but they didn't seem like troublemakers. Because I've been working and saving for over a year, I had more stuff than most first year students. I had my clothes, my laptop that I'd bought refurbished, and my pride and joy, a really decent television that I'd saved up ages for. It wasn't massive or anything fancy, but it was a good size and the picture quality was brilliant. None of the others had brought a television with them. When we were all moving in, I decided to put my television in the front room instead of keeping it in my bedroom. I thought it would be nice for all of us to have something to watch together. You know, help us bond. Everyone seemed really grateful and kept thanking me for being generous. One of the boys had brought his PlayStation with him and I told him he could connect it to my television. I didn't mind at all because I'm not really into gaming myself and I figured it would make the communal space more enjoyable for everyone. For the first couple of months, everything worked out perfectly. We had this unspoken system where we all just sort of took turns using the television. I'd watch maybe an hour or two on the days I wasn't working at my part-time job, and they'd use it the rest of the time to play games or watch their own stuff. Then things started to change. I'm not sure what triggered it, but they began acting like the television belonged to them. The first time it happened, I came downstairs to watch a program I'd been looking forward to all week. I walked into the front room and they were all sprawled out playing FIFA. I asked them politely if I could watch my program since it was starting in 5 minutes. The first boy immediately suggested I just watch it in my bedroom instead. I explained that I could, but I prefer to watch it on the actual television. Then the second boy chimed in, saying there were 3 of them and only one of me, so it wasn't really fair for them all to stop playing just because I wanted to watch something. I was a bit taken aback, but I didn't want to cause a scene, so I just went upstairs and watched it on my laptop. It wasn't ideal, but I let it slide. Then it kept happening. Every single time I wanted to watch something, I got the same response. The third boy would tell me to just go watch it in my bedroom so they could play FIFA. It became their standard answer whenever I came downstairs, wanting to use my own television. I tried to be reasonable about the whole thing. Some programs I genuinely didn't mind watching on my laptop, like comedies or random stuff I was just putting on for background noise, but there were certain things that were really better to watch on a proper television, like nature documentaries or dramas with amazing cinematography. You lose so much on a tiny laptop screen. I started giving them notice in advance, thinking that would solve the problem. I tell them the day before that I wanted to watch something at a specific time, thinking they'd have plenty of opportunity to plan their gaming around it. But it made no difference whatsoever. I'd let them know that I wanted to watch the television tomorrow night at 8, and the first boy would casually agree and say sure, whatever. But then when tomorrow night at 8 came around, they'd act like I'd never said anything and tell me to go watch it in my bedroom. I kept reminding them politely that the television actually belonged to me and I was only asking for an hour of viewing time with plenty of notice. They'd just shrug or roll their eyes like I was being unreasonable. This went on for weeks, and I could feel myself getting more and more frustrated. I'd bought that television with my own money that I'd earned from working weekends and evenings while studying for my exams. I'd chosen to share it with them out of kindness, and they were treating me like I was some sort of inconvenience in my own house. The final straw came one evening when I told them the previous day that I wanted to watch something. I came downstairs at the agreed time and found them, predictably, playing FIFA. I reminded them that I told them yesterday I needed the television at this time. The second boy just told me to go watch it in my bedroom because they were in the middle of a tournament. The third boy agreed with him, calling me selfish and pointing out there were 3 of them. Something inside me just snapped. I didn't say another word. I walked straight over to the television, unplugged it from the wall, and disconnected their PlayStation from the back. They started shouting immediately, but I ignored them completely. The first boy demanded to know what I was doing and said I couldn't just take it. I told him that, actually, I could, because it was my television. I picked it up and carried it straight upstairs to my bedroom while they followed me down the hallway, shouting and protesting. I set it up on my desk, plugged it in, and sat down to watch my program. I had to turn the volume up extra loud because they were banging on my door and complaining outside, but I didn't care anymore. I'd had enough of being treated like a doormat in my own home. The atmosphere in the house was awful for the next few days. They barely spoke to me, and when they did, they made snide comments about me being selfish and unreasonable. I just ignored them and enjoyed having my television back in my room where I could watch whatever I wanted whenever I wanted. Then, about a week later, a delivery van pulled up outside. One of the boys had called his parents, and apparently they'd agreed with him that I was being awful. They'd ordered him a new television, which arrived that afternoon. It was a bit smaller than mine, but they didn't seem to care. They set it up in the front room and went straight back to their gaming marathon like nothing had happened. They'd made me out to be the villain when all I'd done was take back my own property that I'd generously shared with them. His parents had just bought them a replacement without even hearing my side of the story, which said everything about why he acted so entitled in the first place. I kept my television in my room for the rest of the year and never offered to share anything with them again. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.